On the day of her election, she was the youngest chief prosecutor of any major city in America. But over the past few months, Marilyn Mosby has found herself on the other side of the courtroom as a defendant. After being found guilty in 2 separate federal trials, she's now facing up to 40 years in prison. As the clock ticks down to her sentencing on Thursday, she is still fighting for her freedom. ABC's Janai Norman spoke with Mosby and her attorney.
Justice is always worth the price paid for its pursuit. Always, always.
Marilyn Mosby, once Baltimore's top prosecutor, is awaiting sentencing for convictions that carry the possibility of decades in prison. Mosby and her attorney, Angela Rye, painting it as political retaliation.
What I would say first is that Marilyn is not the only one, she's the latest one. And it is remarkably egregious. Black women prosecutors, progressive prosecutors in this country have been overwhelmingly targeted. And then Donald Trump himself, who said when he was running for office that she should prosecute herself. Bill Barr, who was his attorney general, saying that there are cities like Baltimore, and he named others, that he was specifically looking at. It was by design from the very beginning a witch hunt.
Though the investigation was completed since President Biden took office, the inquiry into Mosby started under Donald Trump's presidency. Mosby rose to public prominence in 2015 with the case of Freddie Gray, seen here being arrested. He suffered a fatal spinal injury while in police custody.
That boy leg look broke.
In the midst of the unrest, Mosby moving to charge the 6 officers involved.
No one is above the law. I was one of the first prosecutors in this country to attempt to hold police officers accountable for the death of a black man. That exposure ultimately led to reform, right? Not just in the state, in the city of Baltimore and statewide, but nationally.
The prosecution couldn't secure convictions for 4 of the officers and decided in 2016 to drop all the charges.
Tell me about your proudest moments in your role as state's attorney.
My office successfully convicted 33 police officers after Freddie Gray, those individuals that were violating the rights of citizens in Baltimore City. My office created the first conviction integrity unit in the entire state of Maryland, where we did reinvestigations into claims of actual innocence. We exonerated 13 innocent black men that collectively served 300 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. And so to now be in a position where I'm facing the same sobering reality as each of those individuals it's incredibly disheartening.
Across 2 separate trials, federal prosecutors sought to prove she falsified documents. First, to withdraw money from her retirement account early, and then to purchase 2 homes in Florida. The first trial in November of last year was on 2 charges of perjury connected to those 2 retirement account withdrawals in 2020, both done using a provision of the CARES Act, the Congressional COVID Relief Package, one withdrawal for $40,000 and the other for $50,000.
This is not PPP loans. This is not COVID relief funding. This is me being advised and with having access, taking out my own money, the money that I put away every 2 weeks.
The prosecution accused her of lying about having a financial hardship on her request form, saying she aimed to take advantage of the law meant to give favorable tax treatment to people struggling during the height of the pandemic. They presented evidence at trial that showed she made about $9,000 more in 2020 than 2019.
Are you saying that the actions for which you were convicted, you're not saying that you didn't do those or that didn't happen? Or am I misunderstanding?
No, I think that what we're saying is that it was not perjury to say that she experienced an adverse financial consequence due to COVID. She called to ask the administrator of the Baltimore Deferred Compensation Plan if she qualified twice, right?
Nationwide, yes.
So if you call and you're told that an adverse financial consequence,
which hasn't been legally defined,
and so obviously experienced an adverse financial consequence, I think what is so remarkable to me, again, I keep using that word, is how do they know how Marilyn was impacted by COVID? She is, making decent money as a Baltimore City State's attorney. There are people who she's responsible for. None of us knew, if people could remember what was happening during COVID, none of us knew what was next. We were all experiencing adverse financial consequences.
The jury found Mosby guilty on both counts. Mosby says she used the money from her retirement account to close on 2 homes in Florida, an 8-bedroom house in Kissimmee, Florida near Disney World, and a condo in Longboat Key on the Gulf Coast. Prosecutors presenting evidence at trial accusing Mosby of falsely stating in a letter to the lender that she'd received an outstanding $5,000 as a gift from her then-husband, Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby. In reality, they say she transferred those $5,000 to him, and then he transferred it back. The gift letter is the only accusation the jury convicted Mosby on in the mortgage fraud trial.
You know, the thing here is that they almost make it seem like wiring money between spouses is money laundering.
One thing that critics online are saying, they're like, wait, this 40 years, you're not actually facing 40 years. Yes, that is possible, but it's highly unlikely. Prosecutors are asking for 20 months. But you're saying even more than the jail time, that not only has the personal effects on Marilyn, but it sends a message.
It sends a major message, and I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind is the type of crime. This gets right to the heart of her integrity, her honesty, and her character.
The investigation was extremely expansive. They combed my taxes. They went through my campaign contributions. They were looking at my charitable donations. They were knocking on neighbors' doors at 5 in the morning to interrogate my hairdresser, my children's dance instructors. They sent subpoenas to all of the black churches a few months before my election, all to create an environment in which I would be isolated and villainized in the media. And ultimately, I lost my election as a result of it.
She says her 2022 indictment has taken a toll on her personal life, including her marriage. She and her husband, now divorced, and she says she worries about the impact her going to prison would have on their 2 teenage daughters.
They've done this intentionally to break me. To break me psychologically, spiritually, professionally. I lost my election. Financially, I've spent hundreds and thousands of dollars trying to defend myself against these ridiculous accusations. You know, I lost my marriage as a result of this. He's a public servant, him just recently losing his election.
ABC News reached out to the Department of Justice for comment, but officials declined, though they have said in court filings Ms. Mosby was charged and convicted because she chose to repeatedly break the law, not because of her politics or policies. She's now seeking a pardon from President Biden, fearing a conviction could lead to the Bar Association taking away her license to practice law.
The pardon is because it erases the slate. It will come in to correct an injustice.
So what does life look like for you Friday and beyond?
Friday, and I will say, based off of my faith, I know that God will have the final say. And my hope is that I will walk out of that courthouse and be able to start my life again, rebuild my life with my little girls.
Our thanks to Janai for bringing us that conversation.